Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hey everyone, welcome to another video on the JayBee and Milly channel. Today we are moving on with our Scooby-Doo new movie reviews, and today it will be The Haunted Showboat. So I feel like this is one I've not seen before. It wasn't kind of ringing any immediate bells in terms of familiarity, JayBee?
No, I've never seen any of this. I've never even heard. Well, look, the only time I've heard of Josie and the Pussycats is the Rick Cop interview, and apparently they inspired the Hex Girls. So
Heard of the Pussycat Dolls, but not Josie.
Josie.
Or I don't know. Anyway, I guess a brief plot summary. I'm not too sure how accurate this one is. I want to make sure I get it as good as possible. But ultimately, the Pussycat Dolls and Josie are working on a showboat. The boat's going to be relaunching. It's, been redecorated and everything, ready for its kind of launch, at which the Josie and the Pussycat Dolls will be performing. But as always, there's some kind of mystic entity that is wanting to stop the boat from being restored and commencing on its journey and all that kind of thing. So it's down to the gang to work out who it is that's trying to stop the boat.
Here's an interesting one. So the visual that I'm using has the 3 Pussycat Dolls, right? But we also have someone played by Casey Kasem and someone with like Cruella hair. So I'm kind of thinking, when we get the introduction, normally we get like, well, zoinks everyone, this week Scooby and the gang are joined by Batman and Robin. Whereas this time they say, it's Josie and the gang this week, you know what I mean? So I'm thinking, is it Josie and the gang because it isn't just Josie and the Pussycats, it's Josie and some other people with the Pussycats? Or are we thinking that it's been centered retroactively because they didn't want to say the word pussy?
I mean, didn't I say on the last one that they didn't say the Harlem Globetrotters? They said the Harlem something.
They never say that, actually. I think it's Harlem that they get away with for that. It's just the famous Globetrotters or, the world-renowned.
So maybe it's just that they're not saying the full name for whatever reason, be it copyright entity or I don't know.
It's weird.
It's odd. Anyway, I guess kind of getting into things a little bit more. I know that everyone we've spoken to that worked on Scooby said they did were always conscious they wanted to make sure it wasn't a timepiece or that it wasn't, pinpointable in any way to a specific time that made it feel outdated. Yeah, I will admit, at the very start of this, when Daphne's talking about Mark Twain Country and Tom Swain Festival.
Tom Swain.
Not a clue what she was talking about.
Well, I had an inkling. I think Mark Twain is an author who wrote The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, starring Tom Sawyer. There was the book 1 was, I think, called Tom Sawyer, and then the sequel was, I think, Huckleberry Finn. I don't know, I haven't researched it, but in my travels among books, I think that's what it was. Bit of an obscure reference for the start of, I guess, a rock episode, but
just odd. But ultimately the gang end up at the showboat, and that's where they meet the guests. So JayBee, thought on the guests?
There's a lot of them. And yeah, there's a lot of them.
I didn't really like any of them. Controversially, I didn't like how much the Alexander sounded like Shaggy. I just think that if you're gonna kind of take the cheap route out and cast someone for 2 characters, there needs to be more distinction.
Yeah, I agree. Because you could tell that Robin was Casey Kasem, but it wasn't in your face obvious. Because they looked different and they sounded different enough. Hey, they actually look similar as well.
This could have just been Shaggy in one of his disguises, because Shaggy and Scooby are known for disguising themselves in chase scenes and stuff. Could have literally just been that and you wouldn't have known.
Yeah, looked like Shaggy, sounded like Shaggy. And this is literally Casey Kasem. He could have just put on his, DJ voice and it would have been distinct enough and made sense, but yeah, it was a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, and also, I didn't kind of like how, honestly, they just made one of them come across as dumb. And it's kind of like, that's not a character, that's just kind of taking the mick out of someone. And so, I don't know, I wasn't a fan of any of the additional characters.
Yeah, I know they had their own show. They're basically a rock band that travel around and solve mysteries and get in adventures. But I don't know if it's like the same cast, if it was like a true crossover, or if it was just here's some characters we have the rights to or that we know, let's take them in for an adventure.
And ultimately, like we said, they're part of the reopening of this boat. So when they find out kind of the extent of the hauntings, they want to leave, but ultimately they're told that they can't. So the gang stay behind to kind of help them investigate things. And at this point, when we meet the villains, we have the ghost of Indian Joe and Captain Scavenger. So JayBee, thoughts?
I guess it's another problematic Indian ghost. When we were first watching it, I thought that there was, because it's on like a boat, I thought they were saying Engine Joe, like, because it's like, I thought it was like a weird American accent thing. I was like, oh, it's Engine Joe, like he must have been the engineer of the boats back in the day, and like he fell in the water and now he's a spirit or something. But no, we just here's Indian Joe. Don't know how many Indians are called Joe, but he looks cool, so yeah, I mean, interesting. I guess another one where they're presented not coloured, right?
Yeah, it's another one where, like you say, they've kind of not used a certain colour palette for the ghosts or anything like that. And also, I know this is something that you always had an issue with, but it's just too humanoids.
Yeah, there's a creepy Indian, creepy captain.
I think it's certainly time to mix it up with the villains a little bit more. I don't feel like there's been anything really notable for a while. Because even the Loch Ness one, I thought that was terrible, so no villains have been of note to me recently.
Yeah, well, not being a purist or anything, but I guess in hindsight I can see that there's a reason why, even in Trick or Treat this year, it's, oh look, there's Captain Cutler from Where Are You? There's...
Spoiler. Okay, so like I said, the villains are kind of quite typical, not too kind of elaborate. And then we meet the guy who wants to buy the boat, and again, that's kind of typical story arc. Very much there'd be the usual suspect. Nothing too kind of exciting or of note seems to happen.
No, he reminds me, I don't know if they called back to this, but his outfit is very similar to Senor Fuente from The Monster of Mexico. I don't know if when they made like that character they wanted to call back to this guy. Because like that character, spoilers, whatever, it's like almost, what's the opposite of a wolf in sheep's clothing? It's like a sheep in wolf's clothing. You think he's a bit of a sleazy geezer, but he's alright. He's alright, you know what I mean? He's fine, he's good, he's alright. He's a nice, I don't know if he's a nice guy, but he's not a villain.
No. And ultimately, they work on getting the boat ready and restoring it and everything. This is where we get this scene where Alexander really starts to speak a lot, and the similarities between him and Shaggy just really are overwhelming. I find it very difficult to distinguish between the two, so nothing kind of, I don't know, I feel like so far I've kind of had nothing good to say, but I am actually kind of stuck on this one.
Well, I know that the comments are going to be like, oh, this is like a 9 out of 10 episode, but ultimately it's trash, because, I don't know, maybe I was too overhyped by Rick Kopp saying, these were the characters that influenced the Hex Girls, so I'm like, oh great, so we're going to get a trio of young women who like to rock out, they're kind of groovy, they're gonna, you know what I mean, like this is potential for some great music, and there's a massive 8-minute chase sequence, maybe even 10 minutes, that's just awkward grunting from the villains, and like that kind of running sound effect, but it's like Josie and the Pussycats, and not one song is gonna play over that. Like, this may be a decent episode of Scooby, but it's a complete waste of the guest.
See, a couple of things. I kind of see where you're coming from with that, but I also think this is still danger-prone Daphne era. You know what I mean? Where Daphne's not really been able to fly the feminist flag yet or anything like that. And obviously I'd say the Hex Girls were of the generation where Daphne's flying that feminist flag, and so they're more developed too. Whereas this is very much just kind of, honestly, negative representation of women to some extent. Like, I'm gonna say that there's one character that's very just bossy and self-absorbed, and one that's absolutely ridiculously stupid. And it's kind of like, it's just not showing female characters in a positive light, which is something the Hex Girls do. So perhaps it's just the bad era of danger-prone Daphne's representation of women, when the Hex Girls era kind of does that better.
Maybe. I guess it doesn't excuse it now, though, does it? And again, I don't know how they carried their own show with these characters. That would be interesting to see.
No, and also it's kind of difficult to know what they did, right? Because like you say, it's meant to be music. That's meant to be their thing. They're meant to be there for reopening the boat. So why were they there when the boat was being restored? And they were kind of doing the painting and everything. Do you know what I mean?
Well, the guy said, the Shaggy guy was like, oh, I was meant to book them on a cruise, but I didn't know it was haunted and run down. But
then why are they performing and why are they working on it? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like they almost didn't know what to do with the characters. Like, they could have stuck with the music thing and, like you say, had a better chase sequence with better background music and all these kinds of things. But ultimately, I was kind of stuck, like, asking what they were.
I don't know why there's so many of them. Like, there's 3 pussycats. We even needed just them. Or, like, it's like they didn't, like, I don't know why. This is an odd one, because I know people are gonna love this episode because it's old. But they didn't, like, even with just 3 pussycats, they didn't have a storyline for them. So why complicate it and add in 2 more people? And on top of that, when they do perform at the end, it isn't even a song, it's just them dancing about. Like, you know, unlike with the Globetrotters, you kind of get a few basketball references in the first one. You know, it's fun shenanigans, but then it ends with a full-on, you know, game, albeit a bit cartoony and wacky. Here, it doesn't even end with a good song, it's just... and they're, like, just wiggling around.
All I'm going to say is it must have taken a brilliant amount of imagination for Rick Cop to get from here to the Hex Girl.
Like, no matter what people think about the quality of this episode, I think, and this includes even, you know, what, Phyllis Diller? Who's the one that I don't like?
Is it Phyllis Diller?
The kind of one with the 85 husband. That, at least, is a quirk. I didn't like it, but it was her, and it littered through the episode.
It was her character. They don't have a character. They don't have a
tasteless.
Strong music thing or a strong they're helping decorate the boat thing. It's just they're there. They feed in as it happens. The gang are decorating the boat. They're decorating the boat. The gang are partying at the end. They're partying at the end.
It's a fair mystery.
They don't have their own existence.
It's a fair mystery. There's fair villains. The pussycats are just in the way. And I think this is the worst use of a guest that they've done so far.
It almost just complicated it.
It's just more people.
And ultimately, like you say, it exists quite well without the pussycat dolls. I mean, if you just look at the story of the end as well, you know, Shaggy and Scooby following the trail of money, very kind of typical Scooby. With the, you know, them being rescued in the cave at the end with the chase sequence. There's nothing that's added to this by the guests. The Harlem Globetrotters always added something. It's why, in my opinion, they're the best guests that's been on these series. And they add a new fun dynamic, especially in the last episode we recorded. These guests just add nothing other than confusion. So ultimately, I guess I'm ready to go to verdicts, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
I know I kind of briefly touched upon, you know, there's the trail of money. They end up in the cave. They, you know, have that bit where there's the kind of standard chase sequence. Oh, it's a bit quirky. They've fallen over. They're a bridge. Let's run over that person because they're a bridge. And then follow them back to the boat. Big unmasking. Oh, shock, horror. Nobody's who they turn out to be. This one's wearing 2 masks and it's somebody that we're not even aware of. And that guy wasn't really missing. And the guy who we all thought it was is actually a cop.
Yeah. Not Rick Cop, though. My thing that's like the worst thing about this is literally just musical guest, an overinflated 8-minute chase sequence that didn't even have a song. That's my main, like, why? Even if you're just gonna have an 8-minute, oh look, the Pussycat Dolls have a new album out, let's all go and buy it. Even if that was 8 minutes of the episode, it would have been better than just nothing. So, who does their verdicts first?
It's always you, JayBee. Smash or pass?
So, I don't know what to do with this one because it's a fair episode. If it was an episode of Where Are You, it would be, oh, that was fun. I guess I'll smash that. It's alright. But as an episode of the new Scooby-Doo movies, honestly, I think it's near bottom. I don't want to say bottom, but it's near bottom just because it's so... I don't know, it's kind of nothing. I don't know if it's like I'm ill and I'm in a bad mood, but the guest was wasted, and I don't know, I just think it was a bit of a weird one, so I'll pass this one. But if the Pussycats are coming back, which I don't know if they are or not at this stage, I'm excited because I think they would have learned by their mistakes, and maybe this was just, oh, it's early on in the series, perhaps they just had some stuff to figure out, so... Yeah, I'll pass this one, but you know, it's a minimal pass. What about you? Would you smash or pass this episode?
I mean, ultimately, I think I have to agree with you. I don't have anything positive. Well, the positive thing that you say is what I agree upon. Without the guest, this would have been a good episode. It was the right premise. There was a mystery. There was a plot. But the guest became confusing. There was no clarity on who the guest was or what they did. Usually, if the guest is an actor, it's set on a film set, or if the guest is a sports personality like the Globetrotters, there's a game of basketball at the end. With this, there was nothing to identify them, what they do, or how to move the plot forwards. There was nothing they contributed that the gang themselves wouldn't have managed to do in the long run. So ultimately, like you said, as an episode of Where Are You, if the gang had done this on their own, it'd have been decent. Could have even been a smash. But as you say, it was a what's new movie, and with the Pussycat dolls in it, it wasn't good at all. It was a pass, definitely a pass. So a unanimous decision. We're agreeing. And for us to agree, something's got to be right there.
Yeah, it's just one of those ones that I know very few will agree with us on because we didn't grow up on this series or on this episode. I can see that the nostalgia would kick in, especially for like Josie and the Pussycat fans, that they would love this, but I guess that's the point of a new perspective, right? Like, fresh eyes, just watching this for the first time now, no idea who the Pussycats are. I don't know, not really that great. But, yeah, I mean, next time we will be reviewing Scooby-Doo meets Genie, Mystery in Persia, which I am really looking forward to, because a lot of people have said that's their favourite episode of this series. So, I'm excited for it, but I don't want to be too overhyped.
So subscribe for that. That will be going out on Friday, where we will be able to announce who our interview for this week is as well, which will be premiering on Saturday.
I'll say this much. It was a really interesting time to record.
I'd say it was even a treat.
One of our guests, got up at like 5 AM, I think, to do it, because the special guest was in the Philippines. The first time we've interacted with an interviewee that's been in the Philippines, so an interesting one, but I think everyone's gonna like it. Do you want to go to the Philippines one day, Milly?
I want to travel the world one day. So, any community news?
Yes. Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo is now out on DVD.
Woo!
You can get it, you can buy it, and you can watch our interview with composer Ryan Shaw. That was a really fun one, so yeah. I think that's it. I'm still not well, my voice is awful. I think I will have to re-record these when I'm better, like redub exactly what I've said, apart from references to me being ill. But I actually couldn't tell.
Why do you think people watching this for the first time is going to think you have a really nice deep voice?
Well, here's the thing.
And then when you get better, they're going to be like, oh, who's that?
Question, can you tell?
Yeah.
Because I can tell, like, you know when you hear yourself talk, I can tell big time. But when I was going through to edit the episode we did on Monday, I couldn't tell. I just sounded like me. So I don't know if the microphone has like a just universal JayBee filter. I mean, let me know in the comment section how you noticed me sounding weird in this episode and the last review. Because I think I do, and on showcases I do, but I haven't noticed it for review, so let me know.
Maybe because the showcase is the phone camera and this is the proper microphone.
Ooh.
Okay, that'll do. Like, comment, and subscribe.
JayBee and Milly.